But first, we told you yesterday about an infuriating story from Northern California where Santa Clara County Fire Chief Anthony Bowden says that efforts to battle the largest wildfire in the state's history were hampered by Verizon Communications, which throttled the fire department's mobile data plan.
Shame on you,
to
Verizon.
the point that it made communications impossible.
Shame. And they knew it.
Yes.
They knew it. That's the shameful part. It's not like they didn't have control over this situation. They did.
With more details on this, we turn to James Rojas in the KABC News Department. James, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, James.
Hey, John. Hey, Jillian. Yeah, Verizon is getting a lot of hate for this, but they say it was just a customer support mistake, really.
How so? Explain.
So in the beginning, kind of backing up to how this all started, early this summer, the Santa Clara fire chief, as you mentioned, Anthony Bowden, he said Verizon throttled their data as they're fighting the largest fire in state history when they went over their unlimited 25 gig plan. So when they called to ask Verizon to lift the speed restriction because it was impeding communications and the firefight, they were told by customer support that they would have to upgrade their data plan to a more expansive plan to have normal speeds return. And I spoke with the Santa Clara County Council, and he says firefighters were not only forced to use their own personal data to make up for the throttling, but they were also forced to, in fact, upgrade their plan to the more expensive plan after they realized customer support was not going to be helping at all. And I spoke with the president of the union that represents these firefighters. He says that these fires, they take a lot of effort and they need that communication with each other, especially over those long distances and especially when conditions can change. Now, for Verizon, their response after I reached out to them, they say that this was a mistake made by customer service. They say that they normally have a practice of lifting these speed restrictions when they're contacted during emergency situations, and that it doesn't really matter what plan the agency has. However, in this case, they say they made a mistake in how they communicated with the firefighters about the terms of their plan, and they say that they've lifted restrictions before, but they're still figuring out how this mistake was made. That doesn't still entirely answer why the restrictions were not lifted when firefighters were needing it at some of the most critical moments.
Exactly. They could have lifted it and they did not for whatever reason. Now they're caught, so it's like backpedaling. You know?
And I wonder if there's something more nefarious at work here, because when you're talking about municipal contracts, when you're talking about a city or a county or whatever that buys tires or they buy cars or they buy cell phone plans or whatever, sometimes if it's a sweetheart deal, they'll go and they'll pay whatever it is that they want to pay and they'll get what they want. Other times they have to have competitive bidding and they go to the lowest bidder, and therefore they may not get the most lucrative plan. Well, if you're the cell phone provider and they do competitive bidding and you're not making any money on the contract, I wonder if they were using this opportunity to just needle them to try to shake more nickels out of the county or out of the city.
Yeah, and the chief, he during this addendum that was filed, a part of this much larger net neutrality lawsuit across the nation, he says that this isn't the first time that firefighters have had issues with data throttling. And again, this ties back to net neutrality. The county council who I spoke to yesterday, he says if net neutrality protections were in place, this mistake wouldn't have happened because there wouldn't be different degrees of speed, saying that the internet should be treated as a utility like water and electricity. So they're arguing that you wouldn't create a fast or slow lane for water, something that firefighters need to fight fires. Then you shouldn't create fast and slow lanes for another utility, the internet, that first responders use. And then that raises another question of if this mistake happens again and it turns out the lack of communication or internet resulted in someone or a first responder getting seriously hurt or killed, would the telecommunication company be held responsible?
So if Verizon's saying that this is all one big misunderstanding, what are they doing now to make it right?
Well, they say they are reviewing and investigating what happened. Again, they say that they do have a normal policy in place when emergency responders call about any data throttling or any problems. That once they call and are contacted, Verizon has a practice in place of lifting those restrictions, no questions asked, and it doesn't matter what plan the agency has. As for why this customer service representative or those working this shift didn't know that policy or didn't know that practice, that has yet to be answered.
That's fine and dandy, but it was their customers that had their homes threatened by these fires, and the firefighters couldn't communicate with one another.
Yeah, and we've been seeing the conditions up north and how fast and dangerous these fires have been, often, changing directions without warning. We've already have 6 firefighters who have been killed and more that have been damaged, and other members of the public as well who have lost their lives in this fire. So, in many of the fires up north. So it just shows you that if you're missing one critical tool in the firefight, it could possibly be very disastrous.
All right, James Rojas, excellent reporting as always. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks, James.